Maybe you found this video late at night, when sleep won't come, when your heart feels full, but your hands feel empty. Or maybe you're just scrolling, looking for something you don't know how to name. What you're about to hear is a letter never sent, written by someone who once loved and lost, who stayed silent too long and now just needs to let it go. It's not a dramatic story. No explosions. No big goodbyes. Just the slow unraveling of something that once felt like forever. If you've ever kept your pain quiet, if you've ever loved someone who slowly stopped reaching back, then this is for you. So, breathe. Put your phone down. Let your shoulders drop. And let this letter hold you, just for a little while. There are things I've held in my heart for far too long, not because they weren't important enough to be said, but because I no longer knew where to begin. If you're hearing these words, Daniel, then maybe I still haven't found the courage to send them. But tonight, in the quiet rain of Asheville, my heart just needed a place to let go. November here feels oddly still. The maple tree outside my window has turned that soft red-orange. The leaves fall one by one, and no one hurries to catch them. The rain doesn't pour, it lingers, much like the memories I tried to pack away, but somehow still knock gently at my chest. Daniel, I miss you. I'm not sure when I stopped saying your name out loud. Maybe it was the day you left Asheville, taking that small suitcase and leaving behind a kitchen built for two. Or maybe it was before that, when we were still together, but had already stopped reaching for each other's hands. We used to be so close. Just a glance between us was enough to understand. But now, I wonder, if you passed me on the street, would you even turn around? One night, I typed out, "How are you these days?" And then I deleted it. Again. And again. I wasn't sure if I should ask like someone who used to love you, or someone you've long forgotten. Because truthfully, I don't even know what I still am to you. But somehow, you're still something living inside me. Not because I chose to hold on, but because some things stay, all on their own. Maybe you've found your peace. A new coffee shop in some new city. Someone who laughs when you tell old stories. I'm not jealous. I just want you to know. There was once someone who loved you quietly, with everything she had. Someone who stayed up nights, reaching for you in the dark, and who still remembers how your name feels inside her chest. If you've ever felt invisible to the world, just know, I once saw you. So clearly, Daniel, I still remember the first morning you made coffee for me. Asheville was wrapped in fog that day. The air was crisp, and you wore that forest green sweater you always said made you look too old. I didn't say a word. Just sat by the window, watching you fumble with the coffee machine I had just bought. You asked, "Strong or mild?" I said, "As long as you're the one making it." And you smiled. That first real smile I still carry in my memory. We started off gently, didn't we? No fireworks, no whirlwind. Just two people bumping into each other at a time when both hearts still had room for more. There was a time we'd walk the French Broad River trails every Saturday evening. You always walked on the outside near the street. You said, "So if a bike speeds by, it hits me first, not you." I'd roll my eyes, then laugh. Once we got caught in an unexpected downpour, soaked and shivering, but neither of us moved. We just stood under that old oak tree, holding hands, listening to the rain hit the water. Back then, I thought those moments were small. But now, they're what stop me in my tracks whenever I pass by that riverbank. Do you remember the third-floor apartment on Haywood Street? It was tiny. The balcony barely had space for one creaky wooden chair. But every evening, I'd come home and see you there, reading or fiddling with that old radio. Once you told me, "You're the only kind of peace I don't need music to feel." I should have written that down. I should have held it tighter. Maybe I thought things would always stay that way when we were happy. Forever felt like such an easy promise to believe in. I still remember how you tied my hair on rushed mornings. Clumsy, uneven, but patient. I remember the salad you tried to learn from YouTube. Always under season, always sincere. And the night you brought home 2 outdoor movie tickets. Even though you knew I didn't like action films. Just because you wanted me to try something new. I remember one autumn evening when I got sick. You canceled a meeting, came home, and made me porridge. You placed a warm bag under my feet and rested your hand on my forehead. You didn't say much, but your eyes, they said everything. The way I remember you isn't grand or cinematic. It's made of small things, little moments that told me, without a single word, that I was loved. We used to move slowly. We used to hold each other's hands on the table and not say a word. You could hear my mood in the way I sighed, and I knew yours by the way your footsteps fell in the hallway. But I let it slip, one habit forgotten, one word unsaid. And slowly, something sacred became ordinary. I became someone who stopped speaking when I should have. Someone who chose silence when I should have leaned in. Someone who thought love would stay if I didn't disturb it. I wish I had fought harder for the everyday things. I wish I'd been softer, less afraid of being seen. Because now I know what we had wasn't just love. It was something rarer. We had acceptance. Asheville is still the same. That cafe you loved changed owners and changed its name. But your old seat is still there. I went once, sat in your spot, ordered the strong coffee I still don't like, just to see what would happen. I took a sip. It was bitter. And then came the ache, the one that never really left. Daniel, I don't remember exactly when things began to change. There was no big fight, no third person, no dramatic moment, just fewer words. Smaller silences that slowly grew too large to step across. At first, I told myself you were just busy with work. Those quiet dinners, your eyes always on your phone. You coming home late, brushing past me with a soft, just tired. And I believed it, because it was easier than asking what I was afraid to hear. We used to take evening walks after dinner. I remember the first time we skipped it. I had gotten annoyed over something small. You forgot to buy the bread I'd texted about. I snapped a little. You said nothing. You took off your shoes, turned on the TV, And that was that. The next evening, you didn't ask if I wanted to go, and we never went again. These little things kept disappearing, one by one. No goodbyes, no resistance. I started working late more often, stayed at the office longer than needed, just to avoid coming home to the silence. You, on the other hand, came home earlier, but never came into our bedroom until you thought I was asleep. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night and find you sitting in the kitchen, under that soft yellow light alone, thinking I wanted to walk down, ask you something, anything, but instead I stayed in bed. Neither of us was wrong, but neither of us was right. You were tired in ways you never told me. I was unraveling in silence, and we just kept walking past each other. There was a day I fell sick, a mild fever. I stayed in bed all day. You left a pill and a glass of water by the door. No words, no check-in. And I lay there, back turned to the wall, waiting for something. Anything. That night, I cried. Not because I was hurting, but because it felt like I didn't matter. Daniel, I know I changed too. I was cold, withdrew, fell silent not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to be seen anymore. I thought silence would keep us from hurting each other further. But really, it was the silence that hurt the most. Do you remember that evening you asked me, "Are you still happy?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I was terrified that if I said no, you would walk away, and if I said yes, I'd be lying. You never asked again, and after that, more things fell away. Conversations faded, affection thinned. Even your gaze, once so gentle, grew distant, tired. That winter in Asheville felt colder than usual, not because the wind was stronger, but because the house had no warmth, no fire, no voice. I don't blame you. Truly I don't, because if I were you, I don't think I'd know what to do either. No one teaches us how to stay when love becomes heavy. We only learn how to fall in love when things are still beautiful. But when love needs patience, when love needs us to sit in discomfort and still reach across the space, most of us just grow quiet. THE things I never said out loud, Daniel. There's something I never told you. And maybe, if I weren't writing this letter, I never would. I was afraid of you. Not in the way that people fear anger or violence, but afraid of the way you looked at me. Eyes that once held warmth now slowly going empty, as if I was no longer someone worth seeing. Every time I saw that look, I felt myself disappearing. And instead of reaching for you, I pulled away, I thought. If I stayed quiet long enough, maybe you'd reach out first. But you didn't, and the silence became our story. There were nights I lay in bed, facing the wall, listening to your breath behind me, and my chest ached. I wished I could turn around, lay a hand on your chest, ask, "Are you okay?" But I didn't, not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't feel like I deserved to ask. Daniel, there were days I cried in elevators, days I sat at my desk and couldn't breathe, days I came home, wiped my eyes, and smiled like nothing happened, because it was easier than unraveling in front of you. I became good at hiding, so good that I fooled even myself. But the truth is, I had been falling apart for a long, long time. I remember going for a health checkup. The doctor asked, "Have you been sleeping well lately?" I smiled and said, "Nothing serious." But I hadn't slept through a night in months. Every night was the same. Lying awake, wondering where did we go wrong? Did I change too much? Does he still love me? And finally, if he leaves tomorrow, will I even have the strength to ask him to stay? You may not have noticed, but little by little, I pulled back. I stopped telling you about work because you seemed distracted. I stopped sharing little stories from my day because I got tired of hearing only nods in return. I stopped dressing up, stopped wearing lipstick, because it felt like no matter what I did, you wouldn't see me the way you once did. And the hardest part was, you really didn't. Daniel, I know I played a part in our breaking. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I acted strong when I should have let you see me fall apart. There were moments when you were right beside me, and I still felt completely alone. There were nights I wanted to scream, "I'm tired," but instead I swallowed it whole. Afraid you'd look at me like I was a burden. I forgot that I'm human too. That I also deserve to be held. That I didn't need to be perfect in order to be loved. Worse than that, I started blaming myself. For not being the woman you once adored. For not being enough. I looked in the mirror every morning and barely recognized who I'd become. Tired, hollow, fading. And all I kept asking was, is this why you stopped reaching for me? That question hollowed me out. Day by day, until I shrank so small within our life together. Even I couldn't find myself anymore. But Daniel, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was quiet. Even when I shut down. Even when I pushed you away. I still loved you. I just didn't know how to show it anymore. If there's one truth I hope you understand from all this, it's this. I wasn't cold because I didn't care. I was cold because I was lost inside myself. Ewakimaimji, healing from within Daniel. You probably wouldn't believe it. But I once thought I'd never be able to stand back up. There were mornings I'd open my eyes, stare at the ceiling of the same familiar room, and feel like the day was already too long, like I didn't have the strength to make it through. But then, something small happened. It was a Monday morning. I hadn't slept much the night before. I got up earlier than usual, not out of discipline, but because lying in bed made it worse. Outside, it was still dark. The windows fogged. I walked into the kitchen and turned the kettle on. A routine so old, my hands didn't need instruction. And for some reason, I reached into the basket and found a small piece of ginger. I peeled it slowly, sliced it thin, and dropped it into a cup of hot water. The scent rose softly. Not harsh, just enough to stir something in me. Like it was the first time I was taking care of myself, not because I had to, but because I wanted to try. I drank it slowly, sip by sip, and I felt warm, not just in my hands, but somewhere deep inside. That morning started something. I began drinking ginger tea every day. Then came 10-minute stretches with a YouTube yoga video. I wasn't good at it. My posture off, my breath uneven. But somehow, every time I finished, I felt like I'd cleaned up a little corner of my heart. I started cooking again. Not for someone else, not to impress, just to remember who I was. One day, I made the tomato braised beef you used to love. I knew I'd eat it alone, but I still seasoned it right. used the good plates, lit a candle, and sat at the table quietly, not lonely, just still. Daniel, I used to think everything would be okay if you just came back. But I've learned, if I can't sit with myself in peace, then no one's presence could fix what I'm missing. There was one walk I took by the river. The wind was sharp that day, the sky gray and unforgiving. I sat on an old bench, took out my notebook, the one I usually used for to-do lists and grocery prices, and wrote just one sentence. The day I forgave myself was the day I stopped waiting for someone to save me. I wrote that line again and again until tears fell on the page. Not out of pain, but because something had been released. Forgiving myself didn't mean pretending I hadn't failed. It meant looking at my failures with soft eyes, touching the bruises I hid for too long, and saying gently, yes, you were wrong, but you are still worthy of being loved. I started living differently, bit by bit. Not to prove to you I was okay, but to finally believe it myself. I still miss you, but that ache no longer swallows me. Now, it just sits there, like a cup of tea left on the windowsill. Not warm anymore, but not something I need to throw away either. Thirael, Lik-ter, words I never dared to say. If you were here right now, sitting across from me, I wouldn't ask if you still love me. That question doesn't matter anymore. Instead, I'd simply say thank you. Thank you for staying as long as you did. Thank you for once looking at me with eyes that held so much warmth. Thank you for trying, even if neither of us knew how to hold on once things started to unravel. And I need to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the silences. For the words I never said when they mattered. For letting fear and pride stand between us, until the distance grew into something we couldn't fix. Maybe you never knew. There were nights I wrote you messages I never sent. Mornings I stared at my reflection and saw someone you no longer recognized. Afternoons I walked past our old cafe and wondered, if I stepped inside, would you magically appear like a scene from a movie? I once believed that if I ever wrote you a letter like this, it would be a plea, a way to pull you back. But now, here I am, writing these final lines, and I realize this is not about getting a reply. It's about letting go. Letting go of questions that never got answered. Letting go of nights spent like shadows in our own home. Letting go of the guilt that clung to me whenever I thought of you. I'm writing this to say goodbye. Not a painful, desperate goodbye, but the kind that feels like opening a window, letting fresh air in, and finally exhaling. I still carry the good memories, not to live in them, but to remind myself that what we had was real. It was soft, flawed, complicated, but it was love. And if one day, years from now, you stumble across this letter, wherever you are, I hope you'll smile. Not because you miss me, but because you'll know there was once someone who loved you deeply, in her own quiet, imperfect way. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this. If there's a next life, I just hope I won't stay silent for so long. Maybe you found this video late at night, when sleep won't come. When your heart feels full, but your hands feel empty. Or maybe you're just scrolling, looking for something you don't know how to name. What you're about to hear is a letter never sent, written by someone who once loved and lost, who stayed silent too long and now just needs to let it go. It's not a dramatic story. No explosions. No big goodbyes. Just the slow unraveling of something that once felt like forever. If you've ever kept your pain quiet, if you've ever loved someone who slowly stopped reaching back, then this is for you. So, breathe. Put your phone down. Let your shoulders drop. And let this letter hold you. Just for a little while.